This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to a Glass Blower's Companion, episode number 22. How the hell you doing today? Hope you're navigating this weather. We've been hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold. No wonder people down here are sick, outside of the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic still. Oh, man, right now as I'm recording this, it's like 85 degrees, and we have a big cold front pushing through the area. I just got alerts on my phone that there were some tornadoes up north in Tallahassee. Fortunately, there was no injuries at all. Thank God for that. Lots of damage. And that storm is on its way down here to where I am in Central Florida. So that being said, today's episode is featuring Gina. Also goes by Glass by BoOts out there in the world of pipe making. She's known for her wonderful harvests of bounties of fruits and vegetables that she creates. She has an amazing, clean, beautiful line of work. I've been a fan of hers for a long time, and I've also wanted to get her on this show, and was excited to have her on. I did a little post on social media the other day on my Wise Guy Media Instagram page, which I've changed the name. I had it up as a Glass Blower's Companion, and now because I'm trying to just hone everything into one little space that I'm doing in the podcasting world, which is my Wise Guy Media brand, and also my other content for the pipe world and the glass in general. I changed the name. So anywho, I posted the other day, just because I'd been a while. I'm just curious what the community is looking for and what people need. And she responded on there about social media consistency, posting, and time management as well. So that was part of what her and I had got into in this conversation. And we covered it for a good bit of time. But really, it was just an overall just fun conversation. She is a wealth of knowledge, super talented, a fun, creative person, and I really do think you're going to have a blast listening to her and I talk about just glass in general. She shares a lot about her beginnings as a glass artist, kind of how things evolved into where she's gotten to now making the food that she does, and why as well. We get into topics of creating a narrative within your work, how she has a narrative, and how things have been evolving. But we also, again, get into time management, some different things that we can all do. I'm sure we should all do, not just can, but we should be doing on a daily basis, just routine type of things to keep us organized and to keep us focused. And also with the focus, we get into what the importance and also the conflict that we have as artists on being focused on just one specific thing. I know it's easy for us to bounce around from one idea to the next, but to get really good and find success in what it is that we do, it's so important that we just focus on one specific thing at a time, and we just wear the shit out of that one particular thing until we are beyond over it, but also to a point to where it's so well refined and developed that you can do it with your eyes closed. And then you jump to the next thing, because typically once you get to that point of refinement, it evolves into the next idea. So it's important to have a pad of paper next to you. I use Siri a lot. Well, now that I have these new the ear pods in my head, I can actually verbalize notes or ideas that I have on my torch to Siri to capture in a little note. Just the trick is to go back and look at my notes when it comes down to it. But we get into all those type of things. So I definitely hope you have lots of takeaways from this episode. And again, I'll have her links in the show notes for you to find. She goes by Glass by BoOts out there, and hopefully you're familiar with her work. If not, you will be familiar now. Also, as a reminder, we do have trade shows coming up. We have the Champs kicking off here in 2021 at the Gaylord Palms Resort from March 9th through the 11th. The FAM Functional Art Movement will be co-hosting this year's Glass Games as well, which their theme this year is Game On. They have a fun theme where they're doing having artists ideas they were giving for examples was chess sets, Monopoly boards with little pieces, game consoles, but they have to be functional glass. They're also giving the artists a chance to create these at home, and then they bring the art in to then be judged this time around. I think because of the space that they're in, mainly is why they're doing that. Not just because of COVID, but because the space they're in isn't really set up to have an open flame. It's a gigantic, all-inclusive, big resort. It's got a freaking waterfalls and a whole like rainforesty jungle area with paths. It's unbelievable if you've never been to the Gaylord Resort in Orlando. Typically everything around the Disney area is just crazy the way that they theme it and just overly spare no expense on everything they do. So that being said, again, that's going to be being held from March 9th through the 11th. And then our friends over at Glass Vegas are back this year for May 13th through the 15th. They're going to be over at the Bally's Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas this year. And that's as of now. If things change, I will let you know for sure. But as of now, they're holding that. So get ready for some trade shows happening again as we all continue to navigate what is a pandemic in our lives in the middle of 2021. Or I guess the beginning of 2021, but you know what I mean. So outside of that, I'm just going to let you get into the show. I am done rambling. I just got off the phone with her, and my voice is shot, and I'm ready to get my torch going. My kiln is my kiln's at temperature, which is typically what I'll do, turn the kiln on, get an interview recorded, and then by the time I'm done, it's ready to get to work. So I'm going to let you go, get my flame on. So in the meantime, if you could please, as I would greatly appreciate it, go leave a review for me out there on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast app you are listening to this on. If you are able to, it is very beneficial for the show. It exposes everybody out there in the world to what our community is all about. It helps with the algorithms and all that kind of fun stuff within the technology of what is podcasting. And also it lets me know that you're listening. So I appreciate the feedback. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on email at wiseguymedia@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at wiseguymedia. And you can find my personal Instagram pages of my glass art. My family-friendly glass is just J Michael Glass, all one word. And then my functionals page is it's J Michael _ functionals. And I'm a lot more active on there, so looks forward to that. We have some fun upcoming shows. Going to be doing a couple of different variations of the Wise Guy Minute. Going to be doing one on social media content and creation and creating a calendar and consistencies within social media and ideas and ways of creating content for your social medias, but also that same content you can create, how you can then take it and use it for TikTok, for Reels on Instagram, as well as for YouTube to get folks to you and your work. So that being said, I will let you go. Hope you enjoy this fun conversation. And again, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, what's going on, Gina? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. I've actually wanted to have you on for quite some time now. I've admired your work for years, and it's been fun watching the evolution of the food and things that you've been creating and putting out there in the world of glass and functional and non-functional. And I enjoy your spirit as a creative person. So I definitely I'm excited to get to talk to you as well as interviewing a female glass artist in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a fun journey so far. So
hell yeah,
it's nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. So before we get too far off the rails, if you want to go ahead and get us started here by giving us your superhero origin story and how you were introduced to the flame.
Well, I had been living in Austin, Texas, and really just waiting tables and tired of being in the service industry, and recognizing that I was in a pretty competitive city for a lot of work. So, I started searching far and wide for just something that would keep me focused, because I'm pretty easily bored when it comes to work. And so I found an ad on Craigslist for an apprenticeship, and, I applied for it and was accepted into this apprenticeship that was interesting. I wouldn't say the person that was running it taught me how to blow glass. I would say the people that were in the shop already taught me how to blow glass. So yeah, I just kind of called in on this Craigslist listing and started working. I paid out some money to be able to be in the shop, and then started working on some products, and did that for about 6 months, and then kind of got my toes wet and learned how to turn the torch on and spin the glass. And after about 6 months of that, some friends and I, that kind of all distilled, the whole studio distilled. And so a few of us got together and decided that we were going to try to build our own shop.
Nice.
And so we did so, yeah, which was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, because learning how to build and set up a shop yourself allows you to have quite a bit of freedom when things change. When the current studio you're working in decides to shut down, you can kind of act fast and make it work. So I really feel like that initial jump in my early years made a lot of what could have been big hurdles to jump over a lot easier to get through.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I know, like when I have new students, that's like one of the biggest things. Part of my teaching is teaching them also how to properly set up their shop at home. And I know it's definitely a big insecurity that they have, whether their pressures are correct or the hoses are set up right or their bench is the right height or ventilation is good. Like there's, you can put a bench up and a fan up in pretty much any situation, but it's ideal to have like the proper knowledge, so I think that's pretty cool getting that early on.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm sure we learned a lot along the way.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that, we're like, okay, well, we thought putting this little wall up was going to help our ventilation, but actually we think it diverted the actual use of our fans. And, like learning a lot of those things where, you think you're doing something right and testing it out and recognizing that you pretty much, diverted the air from sucking out of the studio actually, or, just interesting things. So, trial and error, especially back in the day. It was back in 2007, which isn't even that far back in the day. But there wasn't a lot of knowledge out there to find the right answers unless someone was willing to give it to you. So,
yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so that's how I kicked it off.
So this ad for an apprenticeship, like when you started doing it, was there specifics that they were gonna like? What was there? I guess what was the needs? Because I know like I brought apprentices on early on to help with like shipping and packing, like doing some of the grunt work in the studio to kind of feel out their personality or if they were even right for for being my apprentice, kind of thing.
Yeah, honestly, the guy was just looking for people to produce really cheap pieces. So, basically I started making little one hitters and made thousands of those. And then, after I wasn't making any money doing that, I mean, I'm like, I can only make so much money off of a $3 piece that you take 50% of that cost or that, the value and put it, so, I kind of pushed to start making bigger pieces so I can make a little bit more money. And so I started off with one hitters and then the spoon pipe and then little mushroom pipes. And then from there, I just pretty much, once I learned those little basics, our studio as a collective, we all excelled immensely because inside the shop, we were sharing these little tricks we were learning, because the guy that was teaching us knew just enough to get you on the torch to make a somewhat okay product. And so we were all motivated enough inside of the shop to share with each other how we were accomplishing new things, to the point that we outgrew his ability to sell glass, unfortunately.
Interesting.
So he knew how to sell really inexpensive pipes, just kind of almost like, competitive with the China market back in the day. And so when we started getting better and, needing more money for our pieces, or him, it kind of turned into, he didn't know how to sell, a wholesale pipe for $15.
Yeah,
He knew how to
that's
eight
fascinating.
dollars and under, and it was like, yeah, we could be doing, and he was just in an old way of thinking and how it was to, sell proto.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah, and 2007 was a weird time too for the industry. That was like the very beginning of like one of the first big waves that we were having. And I know myself personally, mentally, having done this since '99 and doing production and doing quote unquote cheap production for a distributor I had. I was in that same boat mentally, like really trying to get myself out of the concept of having to do cheap production all the time. And then
mhm.
I mean, it honestly it took me up until, let's see, what have been 2021? I guess about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I actually took 2 years off, completely making pipes. I made a couple here and there, but like in terms of selling shit, I just took time off just to give my brain a full reset. And then 2020 happened, and that really helped me focus on resetting my brain on, I don't have to do this production line because I can do this instead. I can make one pipe a day if I want. And then I found out that I actually love production. I love filling my kiln up with like wrap and rig Sherlocks. So I picked up,
It's an amazing feeling,
yeah,
right?
it totally is. Like there's some for me, like like I have my buddy Chris Piazza has a distribution company now, so I picked up a line of Sherlocks from him just for, I'm not full time at work right now either, so that's helping me supplement my income. But
Hmm.
and it's consistent too, which is like my job. So
Yeah.
it's helped me, but I can work when I want, but I can also crank out like 50 Sherlocks in 2 days, and it's like running a marathon. You get down to like 47 and like, fuck, I want to go home and I'm done with this shit and these things suck. And then you get that last one done and you're like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. I love making these things. you
Yeah, I'm
know?
so glad I did that,
Yeah, it's so rewarding.
It's like doing the dishes, you
Yeah.
walk in, the sink's full of dishes, and you get it all clean and you like accomplished.
Yep.
Because you can work on a really nice heady piece all day long, or for 3 days, 4 days, and you're never opening the kiln up and taking out this like finished magical piece until the end, until 4 days later or
Hmm.
something, and you're just like, wow, like I don't feel like I'm accomplishing much, or you don't feel like you're really working that hard, but you are just, you just don't get that special prize until you're done a few days later. So
Yeah, and hopefully get the
there's,
special prize when it's all done.
yeah, I
you know?
know that's the worst. That's where I run into people where they want to get out of the proto game, and I'm like, be careful what you wish for,
Yep.
because it's kind of heartbreaking and can cost a lot of money. I'm like, always have that proto line in your back pocket, because if you're like, all right, that was 2 weeks of work that I've failed twice now on, and I have these bills coming up, or like
Hmm.
I need some money in the bank coming in. And so you can fall back, take a couple days off of trying to do something super technical, and, feel good about it.
Yeah, and it's not.
Feel Open up the kiln and have a kiln full of finished work that, you don't even have to question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you make that $5,000 piece, and you're like, okay, now we got to sell this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it's
You
interesting.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So with that being said, I've always found like the artists out there that have found success have found their thing, their voice. Like Mike Luna and his dragons, like just for an example. But he's made this consistent dragon look of this thing forever. That's become like a high end production piece for him because he may make one a week, but if he's making four a month and they look the same shape and it's different patterns, it's still quote unquote like a high end production end, type of thing. Um, and I find like with your work, it seems like you've have eventually got into this niche, which I want to kind of find out how you got to that point, to where you've been able to refine it, and then now here we are years later, you're still doing it, but you're also like completely expanding this concept of this, of your voice in a sense, so going from the early days of your production lines and then finally getting to a point to where you found this thing, like what was the transition from going from the production to where you are now with your work?
I the first 2.5 years I started working with glass and making pipes, I had multiple jobs at the same time. So I was hustling hard, hardly sleeping, everything. All my spare time was going into glass. And I had finally decided that I was going to take the plunge and quit all my jobs and start working full time on the torch. And lo and behold, the week after I quit my job and was done, after my last day, I got into a car accident and got pretty bad whiplash, which kind of had me laid up for a while. And I'm just thinking,
Jesus.
figures, I quit my job and now I have this whiplash and I can't fight. And, I'm super sore and I keep getting these headaches. So I'm sitting lounging around on the couch, which is something I typically don't do. I was watching like the Food Network, and I saw a carrot on the TV and I thought, if you were in a pickle, you could whittle a carrot into a pipe. It's not just the apple, like my childhood,
Yep.
And I thought, you know what? This is what I do for a living. This is like my sole way of making money. And I'm like, the next time I'm in the shop, I'm going to make a carrot pipe. I'm like, just because it's not this like, I was doing line work, reversal spoons that I was totally really making them unique and then not being able to sell them because other people were using like Golden Gate tubing, and all these line worked reversal spoons look the same, but like, and then mine looked different, and I still couldn't sell them for nearly the price that I needed for them. So I knew something had to change. And I like went into the shop though the next time I went in the shop, and I made a carrot, and it was the hardest thing I had done. I'd never done anything sculptural. And of course I made like the biggest carrot I've ever seen, because at the beginning I had a hard time making anything small. It's like I made a carrot bigger than you would ever find a carrot in nature. I'm like, what was I thinking? But because I'm just trying to taper this tube down, and
Right.
I'm using like China amber, and I'm like, well, how do I make it orange? Okay, I need to throw white frit inside of it. And then it just became this big thing, and I have to have 3 leaves on there. I can't just keep it basic. And so needless to say, I made that one carrot, and although it was one of the most challenging things I had done, it felt so good to make it happen. And so then I made 6 more, because I'm just like, all right, well, I'm going to fill my gun case up. And then I started thinking, I can make a pepper, I can make a strawberry. Well, I definitely have to make an apple. And that's how I started making fruits and vegetables.
That's
kind
awesome.
of out of boredom and curiosity. And I made that one carrot, and the rest is history ever since, and that was before Instagram. So, I was just taking cases to shops, and they were buying it up. And I had one local shop that actually had 3 shops. They were just like, bring us the garden and we will buy it. We don't have anything like this. And so it just drove me to want to try new things, and new fruits and vegetables. And now I have a garden.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think what's
Yeah.
key to that whole thing is that you actually took action. Like I know there's so many times, like just as creatives, we get these. I've had 100 million ideas in the shower that were like my next $1 million idea, and maybe like 1 or 2 of those things actually came to fruition because I took action on it. Okay, it was a realistic type of thing. So you took the action, you made the piece, but then you're like, fuck, this is awesome. So you made 6 more instead of just making one and then moving on to the next thing. And I think with artists in general, it's so difficult for a lot of people to stay focused on that one specific thing. They want to just jump around. Like I have a student right now, he's been working with me for I think 6 months now. You think this guy's been blowing glass or working with glass for a couple of years. Like it's incredible to see. He's 50 years old. He's found this new passion for some fun thing. He's got a full-time job, so it's like a side, passion project for him. But he's at a point where he's like, okay, so I've learned all these he's been working on multiple different sea life pieces, and he's like, okay, now I need to recoup some money for this investment. Where do I focus on? And I'm like, well, why'd you get into this to begin with? That was like my first thing I asked him. But again, it's easier when you can focus on one particular thing, and then you just repeat that process to really refine that thing, and then the sky's the limit because now you've got some technique under your belt, which is so important. So
yeah, and I look back at my old pieces, and I remember just from the day I started making produce pieces to like a year later, I'd go into some of my shops to reload them up, and yeah, I would be like, oh my gosh, that is a horrible representation of like what was in their case. It would be like, that was a horrible representation of how well my work is made now. And that was a big defining moment for me, because as a creator, I think we're really good at being hard on ourselves and not giving ourselves credit for the how much we've evolved and how much we've refined our work. And so I remember I walked into one of my shops and I was making these apple slice, like kind of stone pipe pieces. So it looked like the apple was cut off on both sides. You could see the inside. It was just a cool stone pipe piece. And I saw the very first two pieces I had made, and I came in and it was just like an eyesore, because I had gotten so much better at making it look like it was actually just cut with a knife, opposed to me actually like slapping this collar on and trying to flatten it and make it look all like one piece. And I just remember telling them, like, thank you so much for buying these pieces that I still see in your case, because I opened up my gun case and I'm like, because now they look like this, but you invested in me and saw like potential. So it's like, I thanked my shops for even seeing past my trial and errors, and like, just the you helping me evolve my work, because if they didn't buy those pieces, I might not continue making them. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a big thing.
yeah.
My last guest actually had on. We talked about that, and I never like he had brought the same thing up, and it was something I never thought about in terms of like gaining confidence in your work. And if you can look at the perspective of the shop owners investing their money and their hard-earned time into your work early on, when your shit looks like shit,
Yeah.
because they see something, they see growth potential, etc. So that by them doing that, you should feel confident and good about your work, especially like you're saying. Like I know myself, I've walked into shops and seen old stuff, and I'm like, let me swap out this for that, please, because that looks like
Well, and
garbage.
I have tried to do that with some shops, and then I'll be like, I'll be back next week. I'm going to bring you some fresh work. I'm going to swap some of this out. I'll just keep this as a time sake for me,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, look at where you've come, how far you've come, or where you started out at. And one time I like went in and I went to go swap the pieces out, and they had sold one of them over the week. And then they're like, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, actually, we'd like to keep the other one, but we'll take these new ones. And it was, that was really the time when I did really realize, like, wow, like they see something in me. And because they bought these crummy looking janky pieces, I was able to practice laying green down and have prettier leaves, and knowing not to put 2,000 seeds on a strawberry, only put 50, like that first row of seeds you put on is a commitment to the rest of the strawberry.
Yep.
That's all I got to say. I learned my lesson real quick on that.
Well, and that's what's so fun with your stuff is like the details. Like when you look at even like your banana slices, like it looks like it's a fucking banana slice. It's like it's got the coloration to it, like it's got a little bit of oxidation going on. It's just, you could sit it on a tabletop and someone might think it's a real piece of fruit just because of the refinement and the time you put into it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, sometimes I have to simplify my ideas though, because there was a minute there that I got a little carried away with really making things look so realistic, and then being very frustrated because I couldn't get paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because doing that, it takes so much time, and it's like, okay, well, someone's only going to spend so much money on, like for instance, I used to make these citrus slice hitters. Well, I had to to make a slice of a lemon or a lime and turn it into a little hitter pipe. It took forever, and I just couldn't get paid for them. People loved them. But then when I tell them the price, especially back in the day when I was making them, I'm like, I need $45 for that, wholesale. And they're like, we can't sell that for, and I'm like, okay. After I heard that enough times, I just realized, you don't make citrus slice hitters anymore. They go on two pieces. They aren't a standalone piece, and that might change now, years down the line that I've been making these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But for a while there, I had to I kept having to remind myself, like, even, yeah, that took a lot of technical skills, but not everybody's going to recognize that, especially like a customer that doesn't work with glass. Like, they don't know how much it takes to like layer these colors up and to make texture, and how to have 90-degree angles on your pieces, and like, and sculpt it, and what that all takes. So,
Yeah.
you have to keep in mind, the customer and your time, so you got to save those projects for the custom pieces or the commissioned work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it goes back to, again, to like, you going back to the shop and they sold one of your old carrots, and it's like, for me, I've always noticed that when I make the nicest shit that I've ever thought I've made, and then I bring it to a shop, and there's a couple pieces in there that are not, to my opinion, as nice. Those not as nice pieces always sell first, and they will be the same price as the nicer pieces, and it's just like, figuring the customer out is virtually impossible.
Yeah, well, and people like glass, like, they like to see the imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
In a way,
Yeah.
the fact that you can tell that a machine didn't make it, or that it's not just something, that's something that I've actually really loved, that I've been able to embrace with making fruits and vegetables. And, is that I don't have to make the exact same piece over and over again. Like, I might set out to make 10 carrots, but they don't have to be the same size. They don't have to be the same shape.
Yeah. Yep.
I like, and so, and I didn't realize what I was setting myself up for with all of that, because, there's been times where, I'll make a strawberry and I use pomegranate, which, is clear a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll not realize that, oh man, or for early on, I'd always end up with a little bit of clear at the tip of the strawberry. And it used to drive me nuts. Like, oh, it's not supposed to be that way. Like, that's part of my handle. That's not the pomegranate that I was using. And then, so I would, in my mind, in the case, like, those are discounted pieces. I screwed up on those. And people would always grab them first. Like, oh no, that's like the strawberry. It's not, someone picked it off the plant too early. And it's just, that white little end sometimes that a strawberry has on it. In my mind, I saw, a mistake, and other people, like collectors see it as, something that's unique about the piece. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and
it's
interesting.
It is, because like the customers, like, I almost call them, I'm so used to calling people like Disney guests. I call my customers guests.
Yeah.
But the customers, like, they kind of create like a narrative for your piece, like, by them saying that, and then I think if, if you step back and look at your work, and you can actually create your own narrative, just now that you recognize that kind of stuff, you can say, yeah, this strawberry was picked a little early, so it didn't get fully ripened.
I definitely do that, like, especially trade shows, and back in the day also, when I would pack up a bunch of cases and go to shops, I would always, if anything looked different, or if I used a couple different colors, or something looked a little more dull, I mean, like, so these were harvested 2 weeks ago, and since then we've had a lot of rain, and these were harvested yesterday, and so we've been experiencing a drought, and that's why these are a little different, or whatever. Like, come up with a little storyline of, like, the harvesting time of my fruits and vegetables, and why they look different.
But at the same time, I think it's so important. Like, I've had artists negatively come back to me about me personally wanting to create narrative in my work, and I love telling a story. Like, my entire life, like, I grew up with my dad being a storyteller, and I've always loved telling stories. It's one of the things that's drawn me to Disney, and as an artist, but also just like the lore of Walt Disney himself, and being a storyteller and creating this narrative around what drives your passions, or what this thing is that you're creating, and again, allowing the customer and the consumer to help to direct the narrative itself, in your story. It's so important, and I think it allows not only creativity in that aspect of writing a story, but it also helps to take your work in a specific direction and a focus.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you can really wrap something around this, and then you can also potentially sell it for more money, because now you have this thing that has a life to it, in a sense. And
exactly.
I think it's pretty cool. Something I'm going to do in one of my short episodes soon is going to be on creating narrative, just because, again, I think it's crucial. especially now with social media, and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
with the social media post, something I wanted to talk about was, yesterday I posted on my Instagram just asking an artist, like, which I like to check in just to see what people need, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help kind of fill in some gaps on knowledge or whatever, out there and help the community out. So a lot of it, including yourself, was time management and consistency in social media postings and stuff. And something I've done this year, which I did last year, and then 2020 happened and everything went to shit. So I just went with the flow in a sense on things. But content creation is key, but also having a calendar, a schedule, and you see a lot of times specific genres within the Instagram world will do like Motivation Monday or Flashback Friday or Throwback Thursdays, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And so what I've done, because I actually have like 7 Instagram accounts, but I have 4 that I specifically work with and run for myself and for my wife and I and for our other podcast. So I sat down the last 2 weeks ago and just wrote out just all of my Instagram pages, and then wrote the days of the week, and then wrote down this is the theme for each individual day. And it's helped me to then understand that I've got a phone that's got probably 4,000 photos in it, whether they're from 2 years ago or they're current pictures. So I can go through there and create a specific folder within my photos that I put pictures into that I know those pictures are going to be used for this specific Instagram, and they're going to be posted on these particular days of the week. And there's a couple apps out there too that I don't remember what the hell they're called because I haven't gotten them yet. I used to have them back in the day, but it allows you to kind of pre-post things and schedule things. Yeah, exactly. But it also allows you to organize your Instagram. Because I know a lot of like the quote-unquote influencers talk about having for your brand itself to have a specific color or a theme that you always run with, or every month you kind of evolve. So as you scroll through your Instagram, you can see like the color background changes or whatever, throughout the time period.
Yeah.
But I think it helps us creatives that have all this brain space that's filled up with all this other shit that we want to do to stay on task and to be consistent, And I know there's also apps that will post for you, which, can be beneficial if you want to spend the $10 a month or $20 a month for it, which I don't think is necessary,
Yeah.
So,
well, and I've heard even a couple people, it's like, it's funny because I know all the things I'm supposed to do per se, to be organized. I'm like, yeah, I'm constantly thinking about all the pictures that I've taken. I have so many pieces that people have never even seen of mine, because it's like everything starts stacking up. And a lot of times I remember to do most things while I'm on the torch working. So all the admin stuff, I'm working away, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, I need to email this person, or I got to do this, or crap, I needed to order this color. And oh man, I think 2 people tried to place an order with me yesterday, and but then I posted this thing, and then what were those shops again? And I'm like, oh my God, there's 100 DMs because I posted this one thing on my story, and 100 people commented on it, and I can't find, it's just like all these things ramble through my brain while I'm on the torch. And then I get off the torch and somehow don't think about any of those things. And it's just crazy, or I have to fight myself from interrupting my torch time by feeling like the urge to need to get off the torch to do the things that I'm thinking about. And so it is this schedule that you speak of to designate, okay, Monday's when I work on, all my social media posts for the week, because, I get a slow start to the week anyways. I like to roll into my Mondays slowly. And, so that is definitely for 2021. I really need to dial that in because I feel myself wasting time because I'm not organized in that way. And, and then I end up taking a break from social media, and then it's really hard to get back into it because, but I've also noticed though, life happens. And if you have to take a break from social media, the majority of the people that you were speaking, that were seeing your posts and that you were speaking to and that follow you, they're right there still waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly.
When you start posting. So, and once I discovered that, because a few years ago, I really had to take a break. It was probably about 4 years ago. I was just burned out. I would stand behind my torch and just turn it on and stare at it. And then like couldn't get myself to make anything. And I was at that time working at St. Elmo's. So I was working with a bunch of great artists, and, and I'm pretty good friends with Micah Evans, and he was working next door. And remember, we were just sitting there chatting, and I'm like, dude, I feel like I need to maybe go find a job or something, because it's not happening in here. And everyone's telling me how great I'm doing, but I'm really not doing that great. And I was really close to just like taking a break, like a real break off the torch, which terrified me, because I thought, oh my God, I've been working at this for all these years. And I finally get to a point where like, I can pretty much make anything that I think of in my mind. And I can't even get on the torch. And so I just started eliminating a few things, like feeling the pressure to constantly post on Instagram and engaging, and feeling the pressure of like, oh, I have to, show this me evolving as an artist constantly. And, part of it was like going to trade shows and feeling defeated when I didn't have a good show, but I put all this time and effort preparing for the show, trying to get out there. And now I'd be going home and like, didn't really sell much. And then I'm like coming home from a trade show down in the dumps. And so I had to I took a break from everything. And then that's when I realized, when I came back to social media, everybody was still there for me. Everybody was ready to see my work still. And I kind of picked up right where I left off. And then, it's a good thing to do, but it's organizing that stuff and making sure that you don't let one thing burn you out over another.
Yeah, completely. Because we do wear a lot of hats when it comes to, being self-employed in a sense,
Yeah.
It gets overwhelming for sure. Yeah, and I think the taking the break thing though, it's huge, because I do the same thing. Like I'm off Facebook. Like I still have my account, but my wife likes to send me shit, so she's like, keep it just for that, so I can send you stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. So I still have it, but
I don't mess with Facebook is a special place.
Yeah, it's a fucking cesspool of bullshit. I used to love like just last year, because of things in the turmoil in this world. I would go on there and just drop a bomb and piss off like 5,000 people and love it. And I would just like drop a bomb and walk away and just like watch all the cockroaches come out and start feeding on the bullshit that I left there. And then all my good friends would come on there and just squash all the bugs, tell them how stupid they were.
Yeah.
And I would just sit back and just laugh at like how ignorant people are, But but for me it was like negative shit, that energy that I don't want to put out in the world. So I would go back and then delete the post, So I'm like, well, now I feel like a fucking pussy because I'm back here. I'm deleting these posts, I'm out here flexing, but really I'm just behind the scenes scared about this post, even though I'm not. But, that was my perception in my head, So I'm like, fuck this. I'm done with Facebook.
I pretty much did the exact same thing, because I would put things out there that I knew probably was stoking the fire a little bit, but like stuff that needed to be said. And then I also would have a lot of ignorant people come out of the woodworks. And then I'd also have my really righteous, educated, on a lot of topic people come out and squish those ignorant minded folks. And I would sit there and I would spend half the day reading all these comments, and I wasn't totally engaging until people got hostile towards each other and be like, hold on. We're not going to be mean to each other on my post, or I'll delete it. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I just sat here and caused all of this, and I'm pissed off about something I didn't need to be pissed off about. I could have just like not ever entered that world for the day. And so I had to stop. I mean, I have Facebook. I'll pop on there every once in a while, say thanks for all the birthday wishes, or,
right. Which I still got to
if
do.
I want to check up. Yeah.
Like a month late.
Which I have. Yep. Happy belated.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, so I had to eliminate Facebook pretty much out of my regular life. I took it off my phone, and, I have to really go far and wide to get there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. But just kind of before I forget about it, going back to the being on the torch thing, I do the same shit. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people on the phone in my head while on the torch, and not actually having a conversation, but have had, and I'm like, did I actually call that person at the end of the day? Or you finish a piece and it's like, I turn my torch off and go make the phone call, but then you start the next piece. You're like, I'll call him after this piece, and then you start the next piece, and then next thing you know, it's like 2 weeks later, and you still haven't called him. So now that I've got these ear pods in my head, which has been a blessing thanks to Apple, is I just create notes now with Siri. I'm like, hey Siri, take a note. But the trick is to remember that you told Siri that you made a note, because I have a shit ton of notes, and I'm like, oh fuck, I got a whole notebook full of notes. I need to go back and check now. But it's been beneficial.
I'm a silly person. I have no relationship with Siri at all. Like, I've never used her, like we aren't friends. And I feel like I need to build a relationship with her, because she probably could help me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now that you're saying like, oh, taking notes and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it's beneficial. I do it for text messages and everything now. It's pretty nice to have that technology at our grasp. It's very beneficial. I also always have a clipboard with the pen next to the bench too. I do a lot of it for doing sketches and quick notes for pieces, but it's also a good spot. Like I remember when Pandora first came out for music, and I was like listening to some random music would come on, and I'm like, who's this? And I'd have to, like, on my bench, like I would have with my graphite pencil, I'd have all these names of bands and written down for things.
All my sketchbooks at the top right corner, random pages are definitely musicians from when Pandora started, and I'm a Spotify listener now.
Yeah,
so
same.
I like listening to full albums, and I mean, Spotify provides me with a lot of great music. So
yeah.
But yeah, same thing, like, well, and that's like, I always have to have a sketchbook next to my bench, because a lot of times I'll be making stuff and then I'll figure something out, how to do something different. Like, oh, I'm going to try it this way and do it. And then it will unleash this like avalanche of ideas. Like, oh, well, then I could do this and I could do that. And I'm like, you better hurry up and write this down, because in 2 hours, or you might forget in a few days, like, what was that idea I had? And, because when they come to you, you got to put them on paper, because as much as you think you're going to remember,
oh, you're not. No, never.
You're not going to remember. I mean, I was just the other day thinking I haven't been sketching that much over the last year or so. And I know I've had a lot of good ideas, and I'm just like, this is why you have a sketchbook.
Yep.
So even if it's chicken scratch, like, you just kind of doodle it really quick and then write a description of it, you'll be able to figure it out. It'll like reignite that idea that you had a year ago.
Yeah,
so.
It's crucial. I know, like myself, when I was making my commutes to Disney back and forth, I used to drive an hour and a half or more sometimes, depending on traffic, one way to get into work. So I would have the same thing. It's like, all these ideas on the shower I would have. Yeah, it crushed my soul eventually. So I had to move to Orlando. Now that I'm like 20 minutes from work. But I would just do like quick little audio notes to the same thing. Like, I'd have these ideas, and it's like, man, I know if I don't record this right now, I'm going to forget it. And a lot of it was content for the podcast too. So it was very beneficial. So, but again, like, I can't tell you how many times over the years I've bought planners and I've used it for like 2 weeks, and then I forget that I had the fucking planner, and
Yeah, you don't get them with the actual dates in them. You always get the ones that you can fill it in. So you're like, well, I got this one back in 2019, and now it's 2021. I'm going to rip out those front pages, or just start it. You can just fill in the dates, because I pretty much had to put my foot down on buying those things. Like, you just buy notebooks, no planners.
Yeah.
Like, you'll create the planner within the notebook, because it's kind of ridiculous. I start off good with great intentions and then fizzle out, because it is. I do think it's because, there is so much to take care of, and it's like, that is one more thing to do, but it's the one thing that is actually going to probably give you more time by planning it out.
Oh, so. Big time. Yeah. It's like having a budget for your money. It's the easiest thing you can do, but also the most difficult at the same time.
Yeah. Like, I remember when I started putting like my sales and everything into a spreadsheet, and then I could see the numbers of every month, like where I was making money, where I wasn't. And I'm going, after the first year I did it, I'm going through, like, I didn't put all the figures in right off the bat. So I put in like 3 months worth of numbers, and I was like, holy crap, what was I doing in July? I made so much money. And of all the months, it was in July. That's
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then so I go back and I'm like, oh, I was doing daily auctions of just like random pieces that I had laying around. And I wasn't concerned about making top dollar. It was like, I was concerned about selling them at, just kind of like getting them out into the world, because for me, I do end up having a lot of pieces sitting around that I don't think are good. And then 2 years later, I look at it and I'm like, why is that still sitting here? Like, it's a perfectly good piece. But for whatever reason at the time, I felt like, oh, this is not a good piece. I can't sell that. And then
And I
you
think
see it
that,
2 years later and it's like, whoa, wait, where was my head? Why did
yeah,
I think that wasn't good?
I completely agree, and I think it's part of the stigma in the industry about having first quality work over and not selling anything but first quality work. I think
Yeah.
that's how it should be if you're asking a specific price point for your work. But like right now, I've got a
Yeah.
couple prototypes. I got these new monkeys I've been working on for one of my shops, and it's a new thing for me. So I'm like, I've got these little prototypes laying around, and they function. They look great. There's no cracks in them. They're kind of funky looking, but I know somebody would love to have this in their home to use. They
Yeah.
could, it's an affordable something I could sell. So I'm the same way. Like I've got a lot of stuff laying around, and then over the years, I've just kind of slowly like, oh, I think I should probably just get rid of this because I'm never going to use it, and it just is collecting dust. And it's again,
Yeah,
it's
it's going to eventually turn into a box. It's going to like end up in a box that you put on the curb. Somebody finds jackpot glass box, like which I have done before in Austin, Texas. Like the curbside finds are pretty awesome here. People get rid of really good stuff, just put it out in front of their house. But I've definitely put like a whole box of glass pieces out that have just been like sitting around the shop, totally, collected dirt and dust and whatever, and like clean them off a good bit and be like, I'm just going to put a gift out there today.
nice.
And, like watch out the window and someone's like, oh my gosh, like what's in this box? It's just like a box full of cool glass sculptures and pieces and whatnot. So that's an interesting experience. I like to give stuff away though. So parts of me wish money had no purpose in this life, because
Hmm.
it's definitely not at my forefront.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I want to get to a point in my life where I'm wealthy and I can live the life I want to, financially wise that I want to live, without worries and stuff. But money does not
Yeah.
motivate me. Like that lifestyle motivates
Yeah.
me, but money is not the motivating factor. Even like having bills doesn't motivate me to go to the shop to make the money to pay the bills.
I know. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah,
I'm like, I think I am a true artist, because like I don't do any of this for the money at all. It's like it's just something that has to come out of me. Like it's just like I have all these ideas in my mind, and people will come at me because there's been times in my life where I'm struggling financially, and they're like, oh, you could make this or you could make that. And I'm like, hold up. The ideas are not the problem
mm.
right here. I have more ideas than a human should have for all things. Like I am a problem solver, and I love to come up with fun, creative ideas, and it's an overload. It's almost too much. I wish I could just hone in and focus on one thing, and I kind of am a little envious of people that can just like make a piece repetitively and dial it in. Like I kind of did that in 2020, where at the beginning of the year, people were like really into my bananas, and my friend was just like, I think you should just make bananas this year. I'm like, what? I can't just make bananas. I have like a whole farmer's market. Like people are going to ask me for more than bananas.
Right.
And she was like, no, you should really just focus on bananas. I think you would, and so I tried my best to really just focus on bananas. So basically I'm like, all right, well, this strawberry fell and hit this banana and it melted on it. So it's still the banana, and I'm like, like, I don't know, this blueberries rolled over and stuck to the banana. So, I mean, it's part of that. But I just like focused on bananas, and it taught me so much in, I still made a handful of other flavors this past year, but,
Mm-hmm.
but I finally got a little taste of kind of honing in on one product. And I had to say no to a handful of people that were wanting other things like custom pieces. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of just making bananas this year. So unless your piece involves a banana, we're going to have to hold off for a minute, but it's like I can crush my bananas out so fast now with, and because I've dedicated that much time and I've gotten better at, turning them into rigs and then being able to elaborate on top of that. And now it's brought a different level of confidence in making other style of pieces that aren't bananas.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's critical. And for me, a couple of years ago, I was started thinking about comparing like the glass world to like the fashion industry and how the fashion industry has like seasons. Every day have quarterly seasons of fashion based on whatever the temperature is outside, or the weather's changing and whatever. So the fashion changes too. And so it got me thinking about so if I develop my schedule as a fashion designer or a glass, quote unquote, glass designer and created seasonal lines of work and just specifically focus on this one thing or these four things for this quarter of the year. And that's all I did. And then once that quarter's over, then I'm not making that shit again until next year at the same time, And it's, I think it creates a little bit of FOMO for your following out there too, but it kind of also lets you have some relief at the end of that quarter and then some excitement when you get back to that time period of the year. If you can keep that consistency going. I tried it and it's not easy to do, but it's like this year, I think 2020 allowed me to reset things. And so this year is where that focus is on the seasons. So that's where my monkeys now are coming in for this quarter.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I tried to implement that with my work because let's face it, fruits and vegetables, they're all seasonal.
Yep.
And certain kinds of produce are in season at different times. And so I tried to create this, which I'm still haven't thrown this idea completely away, but I tried to push the idea of the CSA basket, which is community supported agriculture, which everybody has in their community. But basically you get in season fruits and vegetables. It's a thing where you invest in your local community agriculture, and it's a group of farmers that work together so that they're not all growing the same kinds of foods. So, one farmer's growing carrots and broccoli, and the other one's growing, all the greens, and the other one's having the strawberries and whatever. Well, so I was thinking trying to create these CSA baskets, which are seasonal. And so it was just you can sign up. And if you want to sign up for a spring and fall basket, we'll say for a smoke shop, well, you're only going to get the things that are in season during that time. But it was, so I've actually thought about going into the seasonal pieces. But it's hard to say no to people when they want something that's not in season. And you're like, oh, but I can make that in 45 minutes. That would be great just to knock that out real quick. But it also then limits you to what you want to make,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or, keeping you from being creative and working at dialing in some stuff, that you want to work on. There was a minute I was making a bunch of radishes and turnips and stuff like that. And I was in beets and I was really having a good time and people were really loving them. And then, I think I made them for a while, for a year or so. And then I haven't made a beet or turnip or a radish in a hot minute. And they were on fire when I was making them. But it was there's just so many fruits and vegetables that it's hard for me to zone in on that seasonal work. But,
yeah.
I definitely see the benefits of it.
Yeah. I think, and when you're we're talking about trying to, I guess, organize our schedules and our existence in this little bubble that we have. I think for yourself, it sounds like it'd be very beneficial. I think for any artist out there, that could potentially have a thing. It's interesting when you're within a niche, a very small niche of a industry. The pipe world within the glass world. Within the art world, but then you go even further down to where you're in the fruits and vegetables of the pipe world, of the glass world, of the art world, and then you can really even make that even smaller and fine tune it down to seasonal stuff. And it sounds like it'd be very beneficial and something you would find success in too. like you're saying, like,
Yeah.
you have 30 smoke shops potentially. You could line up and have like a subscription thing where, they're getting their weekly box of goodies in the mail and they're gonna go home and cook it all.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about like even that, like, you know, this like a CSA program is you invest in those agricultural groups at the beginning of the year, right? And
Okay.
then that way it provides like the farmers the financial backing to jump any hurdles that come along their way, right? So say all of a sudden they're like, oh man, we haven't gotten rain for a month and a half. Our crops are going to die, but it's okay because we have all of our financial backing and we can bring in, you know, water trucks
Hmm.
or we can afford to water our farm. And so like it's also this, like if you're a part of the subscription and you like figure this whole thing out, like it could be like, oh man, you hit that, like, man, I just had to take a whole week off of work because, you know, my kid was sick, or, you know, I had a family emergency, and it's like no sweat off your back. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about it, but
Yeah.
in my mind, you know, but that's how those even work just within the community. Um, but yeah, you know, I, I definitely, the seasonal thing, I'm like, it's already almost the end of January. So,
Which is ridiculous.
so I'm like, you know, we have 2 more months left in this first quarter. You know, I'm like, we're through winter almost here in Texas. I mean, we had 75-degree days. So I feel like spring is right around the corner.
Yeah, I think our
So
high
maybe
today
I'll
is like
start.
85 today we're having, and then it's gonna be like
Yeah.
in the lower 60s tomorrow for the highs. So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, so dialing it in and doing the seasonal stuff is definitely on my forefront.
yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I don't know. I would love to see you move forward with it, and I think surrounding yourself with people that will keep you accountable for that kind of stuff and keep you on tasks is
Yeah.
very beneficial. It's one of the reasons I started my Patreon group, just for a smaller community that we can all keep each other accountable within. Same,
Yeah.
same kind of idea. Yeah. So speaking of being the end of January, as we were talking yesterday, you said you've taken pretty much the month off and haven't worked because you're a wild ass. I don't know if you want to get into that at all, but I think I did a couple episodes last year on why you should have an emergency fund for when shit goes wrong, because a lot of us,
Oh,
are
definitely.
a little bit like us, have a wild streak to us, whether it's skateboarding or mountain biking or what have you,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, so I'm going to tell you, even in September, I had the worst burn of my career. I stuck my hand in the flame, and that, my palm of my hand right below the pad right below your thumb, that whole pad got like of my palm went in the flame,
Jesus.
and it was gnarly. I mean, it had me off. I was off the torch for about 3 weeks. And it's the worst burn I've ever had. And it's crazy because it didn't hurt, because it burned right through
Yeah,
everything.
it never does. Right? It's
Um,
like it's for me.
yeah,
It's like
I'm like,
extremely cold, almost feeling
yeah.
at
And so I'm
first.
sitting there like, oh, I'm going to try to finish this piece. It doesn't hurt. And I'm like, my mind of all these years of experience was like, get the piece stable, stick it in the kiln. You need to go run this underwater for like 30 minutes, because although you're not feeling pain, there's a reason why you're not feeling the pain
Hmm.
of your shrink wrapped hand now, because that, like, all the skin got tight. And then
Oh, it's
I'm just
so
like, oh my
terrible.
gosh, why I'm not feeling anything. I can just keep working. And I'm like, no, it's still burning you right now. Like, you're still burning now, because like your skin hasn't even cooled down. And so yeah, so I had that happen in September, so I really didn't get back on the torch until October. Um and then worked for about a month and a half, 2 months, and then my shop shut down. And then I'm building this new shop out, and I went mountain biking a few weeks ago and had a really gnarly wipeout, got a bad concussion and some bodily injury that I'm still recovering from. But I had no intentions on taking all of January off, maybe a week or so, because we were waiting for an electrician to come out to the shop. But I'm sitting here like, well, at least I have some pieces in my gun case. So that's money right there. But for me, it's like, even like when I'm out of the shop, it's really hard for me to be in the mindset of glass. Like I have to sit in my studio for my creative thinking, for packing and shipping. Like it's all in one place for me. And if I'm not in it, it's really hard to put myself in it. So I had to take the time, and I had to, you have to rest. And yeah, you're not always prepared for that stuff to come along.
Mm-hmm.
Unexpected time off the torch. So, yeah, it's definitely important to have a little safety net, whether, whether you think it's going to happen or not. I mean, I have a buddy who just cut his hand really bad earlier this year or last year, and then had surgery on it. And the surgeon, like that surgery went really bad. And I mean, he's been off the torch for like 8 or 9 months now, and still has one more surgery to go. And all he was doing, he was cleaning his bench. And it was one of those like hanger chunks off of I think it was off of a tube actually. And it just sliced between his pointer finger and his thumb and cut all the ligaments and tendons and everything.
Fuck.
And so he never intended on that happening. He was cleaning his bench. He wasn't even working really, And so it's just like,
Yeah.
I've worked with people that are like, polish the ends, polish your ends, polish your ends. Don't ever hand me a rough ended rod,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it can happen really quick.
Yeah.
It's, and it happens when you get most comfortable in your work environment. And that's what happened to me in September. It was so hot and I got tired of wearing my Kevlar sleeves, and I wear my Kevlar sleeves all day, every day when I work, but I was starting to get like break out on my forearms because it was so hot. So I stopped wearing them for a while, and I apparently do this move where I bring my hand under the torch and I do it to cook in some leaves on my strawberries. Well, I went to go swing my hand under the torch, and I didn't have apparently my Kevlar brush gets really close to the flame. I don't even notice it because I have the Kevlar on,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't have it on. I did not have my sleeves on. And I even thought to myself a few days earlier, you're so used to having these on all the time, you're gonna probably burn yourself because, at some point, and sure enough, stuck my whole hand in the flame.
Yeah, it
So,
sucks.
and yeah, and Kevlar sleeves divert, like that flame like bounces off of it. It doesn't, burn into
Mm-hmm.
your like what it does to your skin. So definitely it was like my gut was telling me, you're getting too comfortable with your situation, with your work environment here. And I did. And I'm back to just, I'm going to sweat through the summers with my Kevlar sleeves on,
Yeah, it's so crazy.
So,
I know, like my worst injuries always happen at night when I should be in bed. And just get up early and just keep working because, like you're saying, you get comfortable and then you get a little lazy and then you get tired and then you get even more lazy. And yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
And if anything's off by any percentage of an angle or whatever, and your muscle memory is always there, like you're saying, like I do the same thing. I have like a couple moves where I go under the flame. And I remember I was at Epcot working, and I have an audience watching me the whole time. So I'm like making this gnarly Raticello gecko, and I was just so focused on like 2/3 of it getting hot, where I didn't realize the back half of it was cold. So I went to go heat it up, and so like the front half, 2/3 of this thing is like soupy as shit, and I go to heat up the back tail and put a punny on it so I can take my other punny off, and it just popped and fell off my punny and like wrapped itself around my forearm because of the move out, because of just the weird position that I was in to heat this thing up. Yeah, so like I shook it off my arm and it hit the bench, and I got my hot punny and picked it up and just got right back to work. And I look up and like half the crowd's gone because they just witnessed me wrap hot glass around my arm. And then I look up at the guests and I'm like, "What's that smell?" And the rest of them left, so that way I can like stop what I was doing and go take care of this gnarliness, because it was like hair burnt and skin. It was just fucking disgusting.
Oh
looking.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just like you're saying, it's we get lackadaisical and just kind of, I guess, I don't know, just be prepared for injuries.
Yeah, always.
All of it.
And I'm like fearless. I don't know what it is, but like
Well,
the
sounds like it.
flame and the glass has never scared me.
Hmm.
I don't know. I have a need for I'm an adrenaline junkie. So I like to feel, you know, scared, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like energizing for me. It really
yeah.
is. And that's why glass has captivated me for so long. Like that was something I kept, when I was in my mid 20s and I'm like, man, what am I here for? What am I on earth for? I feel like there's something, but everything I'm doing, I would get so bored. I mean, like, I think that's why waiting tables for me it was something new. Every table was new. It was high movement, whatever. So it was just like something that like kept my attention. But any other jobs I've ever had, I mean, and they would be good jobs. And I'm like, I am becoming a crappy employee because I'm bored
Mm.
out of my mind. This is so understimulating. In glass, as you know, like there's just so many things you have to be paying attention to. And then, you get to this level of comfort where you get to like start thinking about a bunch of random things while you're working and still making pieces. And it's just, but there's always hurdles and challenges to overcome, and then just new things to try. I think
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
rest of my life, I could probably try something new every day and still not try all the things you
Yeah,
do
completely.
with glass. So,
Yeah, I completely
so
agree. I think like so I talk about this all the time, but I've been tested and I have ADHD bullshit, and
mhm.
so for me I find that like early on I was the same way. Like I melted a blob of glass when I did my apprenticeship and burnt myself like day one, and I fell in love and I'm like, I'm gonna do this the rest of my life. Like I knew that day that was gonna be what I was gonna do forever. I just had to find a way to make a living. Never imagined it'd get me my dream gig at Disney, whatever, but. I find that because of the amount of danger that's involved in what we do, because it is a dangerous thing. At any point in time, something can go wrong. It doesn't usually
Yeah.
happen, but I mean, your fucking hose could pop and you could have an explosion in your studio. I mean, just crazy shit can go
Oh,
down. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
so for me, I find like having knowing my brain knowing that I have to have a certain amount of focus on everything that I'm doing and being aware constantly of my actions and reactions in the studio allows me to do this for the last 21 years. But like you're saying, I'm also calculating, why life exists in my brain and the theory of relativity and everything else in the process while I'm watching a movie and having 4 conversations on Instagram, and I'm making this
Right.
badass thing of glass all, at the same time. So,
Yeah.
it's just such a funny thing, the way our brain is.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel lucky though. I mean, I would have never guessed that this is what I would have ended up doing in life.
Hmm.
So I feel so lucky to come across that ad on Craigslist in my life of boredom and wanting some change, and finding that, there's a lot of other avenues I possibly could have taken, and glass just like popped up in my life. And it was, I didn't even realize how creative of a person I was until a few years before that.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, so
So
you had like no kind of art
yeah,
background or anything?
not really. Like I took a couple art classes in school, and I only have a high school education, so I attempted some continuing ed after high school, but pretty much it was like the most expensive naps I ever paid for. I just like could not stay. I couldn't stay awake, and I'm paying for it out of my pocket. And
You're
so
right.
I'm sitting here like, I'm like, man, like I just spent all this money to take naps. And I remember I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even have to be here. This is my choice. And it was like second semester of community college. And I'm sitting there like, you know what? I don't have to do this. And I'm fighting to stay awake in this English class they were making me take. And I was just got up and I'm like, I have to go. And then I went to the administration office and they're like, but yesterday was the last day you could get refunded. I'm like, it's okay. You can have it, I guess. Like, I won't be coming back though. Like, I'm not doing this.
Hmm.
And it was like, I realized, but yeah, like, I mean, in high school, I took a drafting course and I loved drafting. But that wasn't really like super artsy in a way. It was like design.
Yeah, more technical.
But it was also high school. Yeah. And so, but no, I think I discovered that I was creative and that I worked really well with tools in my hands. It when I was like 19, I was living down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, working at my aunt's restaurant, seafood restaurant down there. And I started managing this bead shop because I had gotten into making like macrame jewelry. And so I'd go to this bead shop and buy beads and stuff. And I started, chatting with the owner, and she traveled all over the country selling precious gems and stones. And so she was looking for an employee, and I started working in her shop, and I ended up basically running it, and learned that like not only was I good at making jewelry, being creative and coming up with like my own ideas and being super innovative, and then also I was able to teach really well. I taught a lot of people while I was still like running the shop and teaching a class, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And then I was able to set up, she let me set up all these classes as long as I could fill them up. And I did find, this was actually the first time I melted glass, but it was soft glass. And it was, I found like a traveling glass bead, making class. And so this couple would come up with their trailer, and I managed to get enough people to sign up for that class. And we made glass beads on mandrels. And I thought that was so cool. I had my little map head torch, and so we had them set up on these folding tables in this tiny little bead shop. But yeah, and I think that's when I like not only working for her as a small business and a creative person herself, I saw like, this is possible. You can have this crazy idea to open up a bead shop and it work. And, which to me was a great experience just to see, but it also showed me that I myself was creative, not just good at customer service and managing, multitasking and stuff like that I actually had something too. So
yeah, and it's interesting those little things that we do like that. Like I worked at Subway for 7 years, and I never thought it was like in high school, after high school kind of gig. I ended up running my own shop and had employees and stuff, but I didn't think at the time that I was actually learning skill sets that were going to benefit me 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
I learned production because I worked at fucking Subway, because we just did prep in the morning and cranked out sandwiches all day, throughout the day.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing that now with my pipes or anything I'm making.
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's good skill sets. And the macrame thing's funny too, because I did the very same thing. I had my first little business, quote unquote, was called Heavenly Hemp Designs. And I used to do macrame jewelry, and I had two female friends, these little hippie chicks I was really good friends with that worked at a little smoke shop, and they had a huge like jade and amazing beads and stuff. So I'd go in there and buy the jewelry and do custom necklaces or whatever, and then sell them to friends and stuff. And then I eventually started doing glass, and then made my own pendants for them and stuff. And it's an interesting path to take. But again, you're finding creativity within yourself, which is huge.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for all that, and seeing and just being exposed to like the fact that, you don't have to have these like this big grand plan to start a little business. And like my little glass, starting glass, like I seriously never thought it was going to be my career. I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I really love doing this, and I could see myself doing it, but I didn't think it was going to be like everything for me, and it turned into that. And then on top of it, I had no idea how much traveling it was going to bring to my life.
Yeah.
I for sure, when I started, thought, well, this is an anchor. Like I'm definitely going to be in one place. And then little did I know, I'm like, you just throw your torch in a Pelican case and grab some glass and tools and, maybe some extra regulators just in case. And you can pretty much go anywhere.
Yeah.
So
I've had a friend of mine say we're like strippers. We can take our skills and go anywhere and make money.
Yep, that's right. I mean, I've traveled, all over this country for sure. I've traveled to other countries to blow glass, and it's just, it's taken me a lot further than I ever thought. And it's kind of been nice because I've had family, some family members, like aunts and uncles and stuff that, man, it's like every time they would ask me, oh, how's it going? Like with pipe making and stuff. And they always expected me to, be like, oh, I'm struggling or whatever. And for so many years, I kind of felt a lack of like respect or seriousness being taken by people.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like 14 years later, and it's kind of, it's taken me to other countries and traveled all over, and they're like, wow, you sure travel a lot, you're all over the place. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, and are you still with glass? I'm like, yeah, that's what I do for a living. I am a pipe maker, and more than a pipe maker.
Right.
But I always like to say that to them, because I'm like, you guys didn't think that this was going to take me anywhere, and that I was just some little like stony baloney, kid trying to, play it cool. But I'm like, but people haven't, they just don't understand how much time and effort actually goes into doing what we do.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's not a party. It's like a lot of 12 to 14 hour days back to back to back, to the point of like, yeah, it's a lot of work. So
I always laugh at work when guests always ask me, so like, how long? Because like they'll come in the morning and then they come at night to buy things, and then they see I'm still sitting there doing my thing like 8 hours later, and they're like, how long are you? What? You're still here? And I'm like, yeah. It's nice because I'm like there. I get told to go home, but when I'm in my own studio, I'm working 15-hour days, and I go home when it's time to go home.
Yeah.
And they still don't understand.
Yeah, I built a shop out. I built a shop out at a little cabin I have out in Michigan. We have a family cabin, and so for the last 2 years, my family will come up there, like extended family, and they're all on vacation for a week. And I'll go up there just to beat the heat in the summer here, and they'll come out, and I'm like, boy, you sure work a lot. And it was like a 6-hour day or something, and I'm like, y'all have no idea. I'm taking time off to spend with you. Mm. Like, this is the shortest days. Like, I'm barely getting any work done because I'm only in there for 6 hours. I'm like, cause there's all this preparation before you even make a piece, and, you having people pop in and out or whatever, but they're very like blown away at how much time is spent, working. So, it does. It just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the benefits this 2020 was I was forced to take 2 weeks off from. I mean, we were all forced in general. Once Disney closed, I was like, okay, I guess I'm off for the next 3 months. But my wife had to get quarantined from work being exposed to COVID, so like her and I were just like, okay, well, we got 2 weeks to lay in bed. And it was like that was when I began to do my reset. She actually made me stay. I didn't have to. I probably should have anyways, just because she's exposed. But because I wasn't going anywhere, I was going to my studio and home, so it wasn't like I was going around anybody. But the fact was, like, my brain was still on the I have to do everything today because I only have 1 or 2 days a week to do what I do outside of work. So I was still in that mindset, like I'm off now for the next 3 months probably, and I'm getting everything done today. And she's like, "No, you have like the next 3 fucking months, dude." So I took those 2 weeks off, but it's still it's interesting. It's a weird dichotomy when people don't really understand that. For one, it costs us a lot of fucking money to open up our doors to our studio and turn on the torch. It's like a minimum of $10 an hour just to work. It's like you make $10 an hour at your job. Well, it costs me $10 an hour to create what I create every day, and then the amount of time you got to dedicate to put into it. So it's fun making your family feel guilty when you're hanging out with them.
Well, it's just like, to me, they've had a certain view of like what my life is and my career is, and to kind of be like, yeah, I don't just work a measly 6 hours a day. I don't clock in and clock out. I'm not done by 5. I mean, sometimes, I'll get into the shop at 9 and I leave the shop at 11:30, 12 o'clock, like midnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so it's a full day of work.
Do you find though that
a lot of work,
those long days, because I know myself personally, like I'll spend 12 hours in the shop, but like back in the day, I would spend 12 hours in the shop, and when I also had shop mates and stuff, and I maybe got like 6 hours of work done. Where like now I get in the shop and it's like, okay, I'm actually in here for 12 hours and I'm on the torch for 10. I'm taking little breaks in between things and stuff, but like, it's a whole different focus. It's the weird differences with working by yourself and working within a studio space too.
100%. I mean, I'm an easily distracted human. So when I'm in a big shop, that is one of my biggest challenges. And, sometimes I have to like put my headphones in, put sound cancellation on, and like, don't let my peripheral vision even like work, because, it's so hard for me. But currently I'm in a little 2-car garage studio. Um, so, but now I'm like trying to figure that out. Like, you walk into a little garage shop and it's, I have one other artist that's working in here, and he happens to be gone for this week. And so I'm kind of like, okay, I'm in the garage and it's a new shop, and I don't have anybody around me to almost get me motivated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no other torches are on, and there's, so you have, it's like, there's pros and cons to both of them, but like in larger shops, I mean, I end up wasting a lot of time, because I'm chitty chatty, and I like to, I acquired one of my nicknames I've acquired in the industry over the years is Mama G, because I'm always like, I stop at everyone's bench, like, how you doing? How's it going? Oh, what did you make yesterday? And, and I'm always like checking in with people, and, just, I genuinely am interested and care about them. And so I just end up becoming that, like, the shop mom of all the shops I work in. I'm just like a Mama G, making sure, and I typically, I have the Tums in my purse if you need them, type stuff. It's ridiculous, but
yeah. So speaking of names, how did the BoOts come around to be the name you go by?
It was like I guess it was 2 years into my glass career. A friend of mine's like, whatever you do, if you can get out to AGI, the Art Glass Invitational, which I don't think is even happening anymore. But she's like, you got to go out there. It's a week-long camping experience. You're with a bunch of glass blowers. You're all blowing glass. There's education there. And so I saved up my money, and I got a ticket to go. And, I didn't know anybody. I knew her, and she wasn't going that year. And so I'm like, oh, great. I'm flying all the way out to Hilliard, Pennsylvania, in the middle of nowhere, to go blow glass with people I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so new into the industry. And so I asked her, I was like, what's the one thing you wish you always had, when you go to this event that you never bring? And she's like, rain boots. She's like, bring rain boots. She's like, it doesn't even have to rain. The morning dew is so thick, it takes half the day for it to burn off, and yada, yada, yada. And so I'm like, okay, great. And sure enough, it was so wet out there. It was crazy. So, but it was hot. And so I wore red rubber boots and short shorts like the entire time.
Nice. Good look.
And when I showed up, it was, because when I went to go buy the boots, it was like I had the choice between black, green, or bright red. And of course I went with the bright red because I love color, and, and so, but yeah. And so I wore those the whole time. And when I first showed up, I had like my little nickname, and it was Sun-Kissed Glass, because I'm like a beach bum and I love the sun and all this stuff. And so I was like, oh, I'm Sun-Kissed Glass. Like, the sun kissed my glass, blah, blah, blah. That was my nickname that I came up with for myself, which I felt weird about doing anyways, because I'm like, oh, I created this nickname, or like this under, my glass name. And so I'm there, and I mean, people just started calling me Boots by the second day because I had the boots on. And then it's like one of the last days of that event, and I'm sitting around the campfire with Pogo and Slinger and Salt and Bertoni, and they're all like, your name's Boots. Like, and I'm like, no, that's, you got, and they're like, no, it's official. Your name is Boots. Your glass name is Boots. No one's ever going to call you anything different. You are Boots. And I'm just like, whatever. Nobody knows who I am, whatever. And so that was the year, that next year was when Slinger was releasing Degenerate Art. And so I'm here in Austin, Texas. And so his film got into South by Southwest. And so I said, all right, well, when you have your premiere out here, and you're at the festival, when I said, if people are still calling me BoOts, at these parties that are going to be happening in town, then I'll keep the name. Then I'll like officially own it. Even though for the entire week, that's all everybody called me at AGI.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like walking down the street to one of the big parties, glass blowing parties at one of the smoke shops in town. And I'm like half a block away, and all I hear is BoOts, BoOts, and like people start screaming my name. And I was like, all right, I guess that's the name I'm gonna go with, because it stuck.
That's
and
so funny.
That's where the BoOts name came from. So it was given to me, which makes me feel a little better about it, I guess. It was something I guess I earned. So that's the thing. It's the rain boots.
That's so fun.
Red rubber rain boots.
Heck yeah. And it goes, again, it goes along the lines of your audience creating the narrative for yourself, in a sense, like with your work.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, I think it'd be a good spot for us to take a quick break, thank some sponsors.
Cool.
And then we'll come back and crash the kiln.
Beautiful.
All right, so the crash the kiln round consists of 7 questions, and you can give me a 30 to 60-second answer on them or expound upon them, as most of the time we end up doing here. And the first question I always like to ask is if there's any living glass artist that you like to work or collab with that you had not yet done that with. Who is it and why?
I would love to work with Joey Malakias.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about doing work together in the past and just have never really been able to connect in the shop. So I would love to work with him. I love his sculptural work. He is just, I'm envious of his work. So it would be an amazing experience to mash up some of our pieces together. So yeah, that's definitely someone I'm the number one person on my list at this time.
Hell yeah. Yeah, he's a great guy.
To work with. Yeah.
Yeah, I met him, God, I think it's 4 years ago I met him. We met in person and stuff, and then came on the show and had a great conversation. And it's just his perspective and just to have his perspective and then create what he creates in glass, like, it's like the Tupac head he just recently posted the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
yeah.
He's all about just spending the time to figure shit out to get what he wants. He doesn't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks. He's like, I'm doing this for myself, and I hope you like it. He's always pushing it. It's just, and he's also, like I say, he's just a great human being overall. It's just, yeah, he'd be a lot of fun.
100%. Yeah, we've I got lucky enough to hang out a little bit in St. Elmo's when he was in town one time working with Lucan, working with Salt, and so. And right at the end of his stay, we were like, came up with this idea, but definitely didn't have time to make it come to fruition. So, it's always been in the back of my head, like, man, I got to get back in the shop with him so we can make this piece we've talked about come to life. So
heck yeah.
Hopefully someday.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
My top 5 favorite colors in glass are the North Star Chartreuse, pomegranate, shamrock, Momka's lemon yellow, and apricot.
Nice. Yeah, apricot's a fun color to play with.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I like it a lot.
But it's fun, yeah.
I do a lot of layering with it, so I use it for, kind of making more organic, mixed up stuff that, mixed up looks for the insides of my fruits and veggies sometimes.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about your work is you have like a core to your pieces. It's not just like a surface layer. You have like depth to, even if it's hollow, it looks like they're solid, just like the layering that you do.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. Let's see. Well, I was going to ask you your worst injury in the studio, and you talked about that earlier, melting your hand off. Do you have anything else outside of that?
No, that one's actually the worst. I've been pretty lucky. I mean, I've had, cuts and stuff, or I've had probably more cuts and burns. But that burn in September, that one's the number one worst injury I've ever had in the shop. So,
Yeah.
I don't recommend it. Don't stick your hand in the flame.
Yeah. I've broken bones and done all kind of jacked up shit over the years, and I think I've stuck my hand in my flame twice in different areas, and yeah, those are probably like the worst injuries I've had in my life.
Yeah.
For sure. It sucks.
Yeah, I agree.
When you're in the studio, do you listen to the radio, watch TV, or do both?
I do both. I love to listen to music. I like to watch TV, and I love to listen to podcasts. So
Oh yeah.
really kind of, I mean, I don't really watch TV unless I'm doing something like prep, because I find myself watching it and not paying attention to my piece. So if, it's got to be pretty basic stuff I'm doing when if I'm watching anything.
Yeah, for sure. If you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, whether like a sound it actually makes or like a physical, emotional feeling in your soul that you have, what is it?
When I hear the crack, first off, I pretty much say, "Oh hell no, not on my watch."
Nice.
I own you, basically. Like, you're not doing this. You are going to heal back up. Basically, I'm just kind of like, I get a feeling of like shit, and then I basically tell the piece that I own you. So.
Yeah.
That's not happening. We are not going down this road, basically.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually a place I've recently gotten to myself after 20 years of this shit. Is like, yeah, just owning it. Like, yeah, I've learned how to detach myself from the pieces. However, when the glass cracks, it's like, all right, I'm not just going to give up on you. I'm going to forge through.
Oh, I mean, because it can fall apart into pieces on the bench, and if you give it enough time, sometimes you can just pick those pieces up, stick them back together, depending on where you are in your piece. And, and sometimes you learn a lot of times you learn so much about what you can do with glass when you don't give up on it. So
yeah, I agree.
And I learned really early on, it was kind of like, oh, I was giving up on stuff that I should not have been. And then had I just kept going, then, it wouldn't have been a failed piece. Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah, and even the times that you have the failures, it gives you a chance to reflect on the piece that broke and look at it and kind of figure out what went wrong, if anything.
Yeah, what got you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it also, I think, reflects on if you have a gut feeling about something and you don't listen to it, and then the shit breaks, and you're like, oh, yeah, I should have listened to my gut.
That gut feeling is a real feeling, and we should always listen to it out in glass and outside of glass. Mm-hmm. If you have a gut feeling about something, there's a reason. It's called energy.
Yeah,
you should listen to it.
Agreed. Do you have any glass blowing themed tattoos?
I don't, but I definitely have one dreamt up that I've been thinking about getting this year. But I have no tattoos at all, but do want to have a bushel of carrots at some point tattooed on my body. So
nice.
Because the carrot will always mean something to me. It's the very first, veggie piece I ever made. So it will always have, meaning for me.
Yeah, I love that. And that's like all my tattoos are like specific milestones I've had in my life that when I've gotten them.
Yeah,
for sure. And last but not least, what are your top 5 favorite tools? And that does not include your torch, glasses, or your kiln.
Okay. I can't live without my reverse tweezers. I love them so much. My Elmarver on my torch. I don't know if that counts as the torch, but
nope, it doesn't.
The graphite Elmarver. I learned early on, setting up and going to demos and being like, oh yeah, as long as you have a Mirage or some sort of GTT, I can work on it. And then showing up and realizing I don't have the Elmarver that helps me shape so many things. Mm-hmm. Flat dental tool, my tungsten tweezers, and my mashers.
Heck yeah, I love my tungsten tweezers are definitely in my top 5.
I just got a pair of those for the first time.
Oh, they're so nice, aren't they?
One of my shopmates got it for me for my birthday.
Nice.
And he was like, oh, he's like, you can take away the tiniest piece of glass with these tweezers. And I've always I saw those tweezers for years and never really thought about them. And then he's like, I promise you, these are going to become one of your main tools. And sure enough, they are like, bam, right next to the reverse tweezers, pretty much.
Huge.
Like they're, yeah, it's amazing.
It was one of those things, like I've taken 2 classes in my life, and my first one was with Coil, and Steve Seislove did a collab class over like 3 days, and then the second class was Joe Peter and Peter Muller, and I don't get me wrong, I learned a lot of glass technique, but it kind of reinforced that I knew what I was doing, at the same time. But what I got from the classes was like the tools I had never seen being used before, and seeing Joe and Peter both had the tungsten tweezers, and I was like, where the hell did you guys get those from? And so they told me what they were and where they got them from, and I literally went on my phone right then and there and bought a pair. And it was a game changer. It was like getting my blow hose and my hand torch. It was like, why didn't I have this 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Yeah. Blow hose, hand torch, and foot pedal. Yeah. I mean, like, what was I doing before those things? I have a couple friends that are super OG, and like one of them is like, I see the mini torch as a crutch, and I'm like, well, I see it as a tool that helps me cook my work in, and I really think you should embrace it because it is something that it works really well. So it just helps you achieve your goal a lot faster and a lot cleaner.
Yeah, and you can like hold it right in front of your face and see what the hell's going on instead of being like all discombobulated over your torch, trying to hit that one little angle spot.
Yeah, and it's like the blow hose. I remember when I first started making apples, I was using 50 by 5 and breaking down the 50 by 5 tube. It was like a day at work, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll make the apples tomorrow because my body hurts. And but I remember making them without a blow hose, and then when I finally remembered, like I had the blow hose forever, and I would only remember to use it when I was like in the thick of it and everything's gooey, and I'm like, damn, this is when I should be using the blow hose, but I can't right now. So I started wearing it as a necklace around my neck. When I step up, I tape it so it's like loops around and it won't slip and slide. And so that was how I got myself to start using it. I just started wearing it, and then when I would start to remember, it was already around my neck, had the rubber attachment on it, and the mouthpiece was right by my mouth pretty much. And so it was like, once it was like, oh, I can see what I'm shaping. It's right in front of me, and I can see I need to tip my hand up or down or whatever. And and I can like use my Elmarver and blow at the same time.
Yeah, it's a blessing in it.
It is, yeah, and see that, where I'm screwing up. It was such a game changer for me.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had to stop wearing mine as a necklace in the summer times because I was starting to get a rash on my back of my neck from the plastic shit, and then the sweating and stuff. But like I got to a point where I wore it everywhere. And I'd go from the studio into my house to pee, and there were a couple times my mouthpiece would like come out of my pocket and like dangle in front of me. I'm like, dude, I cannot piss on my fucking mouthpiece right now. so I had to get in the habit of like just taking it off when I go in the house because I would just not even thinking about things,
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good shit. Well, yeah. Well, again, it's been a fun conversation. I could talk to you all day about glass and stuff. You're a lot of fun to talk to. So I definitely have enjoyed this conversation, and I hope those listening also have gotten a lot of takeaways because I think we covered a lot of really good topics.
Good. Well, I really appreciate you wanting to have me on the show. This is a lot of fun, and I don't get to talk shop very often. So it's great. I love it. I love it so much. So it's nice to do it. Yeah.
Well, anytime you want to come back on, let me know if you have like something particular you want to talk about, or we can catch up next year when you have created your seasons and your subscription services and how that's kicking ass.
Yeah, rehash it and let you know how it's going. Yeah, you can hold me to it. I'm like, all right, so I have to do this because I'm gonna do a follow-up.
Yeah. I'll keep your ass accountable if you want. I have no problem with that. I loved it.
I would love that, actually. I would really appreciate that.
Okay.
So
yeah. We'll look for a text at least once a month because I will definitely hit you up.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. And I'll think of some things to remind you to keep up on.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that too, for sure. Hell yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go here, if you want to give everybody a little bit of parting piece of advice, and then where we can find you out there in the world of cyberspace.
My little bit of advice is to keep pushing through the tough times. You know, you might feel like you're burned out and you don't have a whole lot of energy to stay motivated, and you probably are burned out and don't have a whole lot of energy to stay motivated. But as long as you just kind of keep melting glass, you'll get over the hump of burned out, and you will definitely shine on that other side. And it's like the most amazing creative energy you have once you get through that dead time. So keep trekking, especially if you're believing in yourself, and believe in yourself, because that's the most important thing. Someone will tell you it's a bad idea, but if you in your heart believe it's a good idea, then go for it. Because a lot of times when people tell you something won't work, it's because they can't see themselves doing it. But if you can see yourself doing it, it's possible.
Hell yeah.
And you can find me mostly on Instagram at Glass by BoOts. And I am about to start my TikTok, since I feel like I have to do that. But so I will be doing some stuff on there, and it's Glass by BoOts as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think a lot of us are starting. I have had an account for a while so that my kids can send me videos and stuff. And I posted like one little video of just like my torch, and I'm like, yeah, I guess it's definitely beneficial. And it's something that I'm going to be doing an episode on the reels and the TikToks, and just different ways that we can take advantage of the fact that everything is now virtual in a sense. It's eventually going to go quote unquote back to normal in a sense. But I think the audience in a sense now, or the customer, has got this taste of convenience through technology. I think it's definitely something we all got to take full advantage of and ride this next wave, because I think that right now is the very next beginning of the next wave of what we're about to see. And it may not come to fruition over, it may take 2 or 3 years, but it's the beginning of it. So get ready for it.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this chit chat with Gina. You can go again find her on Instagram mainly, and also TikTok soon. Just look for Glass by BoOts. I will have all of her information in the show notes. You can contact her and everything else, and go see her amazing work. And in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please do me a favor and go and leave a review. A 5-star if you can, and also a written review. It helps the show get noticed and helps the algorithms out there with all the bullshit and the technology, and expose the show. And if you're not on podcasts, the Apple Podcast, you can find the show on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're listening to it right now. Some apps have a way of leaving a review, but if you can also go to Apple Podcasts on the websites that out there, I guess online, you can go out there and leave a review somehow. But that being said, it definitely helps out the show, and I do appreciate it. Also, you can find me over on Patreon if you want to help support the show. For as little as just $1 a month, you can jump on there, become part of our little tiny community we have growing, where we are all helping each other out. I am doing weekly conference calls and meetings and coaching calls and tutorial videos and all kind of things that you can only get on Patreon. So come check us out, patreon.com/WiseGuyRadio, since it's the old name of the old podcast. I have kept that on there. And other than that, again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Love you so much. Take it easy. Happy melting. Peace.